Helen, welcome to Media and Me. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem at all. I've been really excited to sit down and have this chat with you because of your wealth of experience in the industry, particularly within the field of sport. I'll be totally honest with you, sport isn't my bag, so I'm really eager to learn a lot as well. Before we get into it, I would love for you to give us a little intro into who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Helen Rowe-Willcocks. I'm the head of content for Manchester United Women. So I cover all our internal content from things that you'll see on MUTV, cover things for the programmes, any match days and things like that. On the sidelines, I also run the Women's Football magazine, which is one of the only women's football magazines dedicated solely to the sport in the UK.
Talk to me about your entry into the industry. At what point did a career in the media kind of pique your interest? And also, was sport kind of a very intentional choice for you, or did you kind of just fall into it?
I always thought, like right from being back at school, I had an interest in journalism. But I actually, on the advice of my careers advisor at school, went and did geography as a degree.
Why did she say not to do journalism?
She said that it was better for me to go and have some fun for a few years and basically do something that I'd find interesting. And then I'd be able to fall back on if I decided not to be a journalist. And then to go and do a master's in journalism, which is what I did. So I did geography, which was always one of my favourite subjects. And yeah, sport was very much always an interest. I've always been a massive football fan. But it was funny. It was going to go one of two ways. It was either going to be sport or it was going to go into weather and go down the meteorology route.
Yeah, I kind of saw that from your LinkedIn. I was like, wow, she's really done like a lot of weather and a lot of sport, but they're kind of very different, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like my two loves, and I took forever to work out which way to go.
Why did you not choose weather?
In the end, it was sport that I got the job in first, so it just happens, is how life happened, yeah.
So was that the role that you got at the BBC as the broadcast assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to me about that role and how you got it.
Yeah, so that was a role I got whilst still at university. It was like a freelance role. They were looking for cover for the Commonwealth Games, and so I covered that kind of over the summer period in between unis, and then went and did a few freelance roles from there whilst I was kind of still with them. It was great. It was absolutely fun. Like, it was so fun to do. Like, you couldn't believe you were sat in the middle of the BBC getting to watch sport and get paid for it. It was brilliant.
Talk to me about the kind of landscape at the time with women in journalism, in sport journalism more specifically. Was it very different to how I imagine it would be now? Did you feel kind of out of place at all, or was it quite positive at that time?
I think at the BBC, it was, even then, was probably quite different from everywhere else because there was a lot of women in the industry. When it started and I started kind of moving more from like all the different sports that I was covering and like going specifically into football, it got very much a case of being the only woman around and not being very many of us. Kind of, you'd go to press conferences and there'd be either just myself or like one or two of us. So yeah, it very much kind of depended on the sport. But yeah, when you went into football, there wasn't many women in then.
Was football a choice for you as well, or was that just kind of something you fell into?
Yeah, football has always been one of my like favourite sports to watch, so I was where I always wanted to go.
So you then worked for Reach after that, Reach PLC. For those who aren't sure, Reach is a huge publisher in the industry, and they have like the Mirror, the Express, and lots of different regionals like the MEN. Talk me through that and how you got that. Did you do a lot of sport there, or was it more kind of just general reporting?
Yeah, that was sport as well. I've been quite lucky in the fact that actually all the roles I went for and got was straight into sport. So I didn't actually,
really
yeah.
Well,
so
it's
I didn't
not just luck. It's
I didn't actually do any news desk stuff, which was I think probably quite unusual. But I did a week. That was a week's work experience at the Manchester Evening News. And the three guys that I worked with they were absolutely fantastic. And one of them offered to kind of take me to a Stockport County game. And then I just carried on going with him kind of week in, week out. And now Stockport County is probably my second team because of it.
So what kind of work experience did you do at the MEN when you were there?
So a lot of the stuff was kind of the regional newspapers, a lot of kind of writing copy and rewriting copy that was sent in for the dailies and also like just the small regional newspapers. It was an amazing experience, and I remember I think I still got a copy of the first time I got like a back page like story written on it with my name on. I've still got a copy of that somewhere.
I bet that's such a surreal feeling.
Yeah, it was just absolutely brilliant experience. Like I couldn't ask for a better way to start.
Did you learn stuff from that you take even into your job today? Like, is there still skills that you think, oh, I learnt that there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it just subbing copy and things like that, until you can learn about it as much as you want in a classroom, but until you actually get given copy week in, week out to sort and to do and to make sure that it fits into the right bits of the newspaper, then it's just second to none once you're actually getting to do it.
Talk to me about subbing, because that is you have to have a very kind of particular skill set to be a sub-editor, in my opinion. I mean, I'd like to think I've got it in me, but I'm actually not sure that I do, because, like, if anything's not right, it's kind of on your head, isn't it? How did you learn to sub? Was that so you did a master's in broadcast journalism, I don't know if we mentioned that. Did you learn that? I guess you wouldn't have learned that at your master's, because it's not really a broadcast kind of a skill.
Yeah, I did. Even though I kind of specialised in broadcast, I also purposely took classes in like the written and the sports side of it, because I wanted to make sure I'd got a kind of overview of all of the different things, because I think I'd decided at that point I wanted to go into broadcast, but I wasn't 100% sure which way I wanted to go. Actually now, funnily enough, I enjoy the written side of it more than kind of the broadcast side of it. But yeah, it was more something I kind of learnt whilst being at the MEN. I'll be honest, it's definitely not my favourite thing to do, but I'll definitely do it, and obviously I do it a lot for the magazine, making sure that I'm kind of subbing all the copy from my writers and things. I also get older people to do it a lot of the time, because it's just so time consuming sometimes.
Moving on a few years, you then became the sports SEO editor of The Sun, which I'm sure at the time felt like a huge achievement for you, because that's just wild. Just for the audience to get an understanding, because I think for anyone coming into the media, it's really useful to kind of understand what these terms are. Like when I first started, I had no idea what SEO was. So in so many words, what is SEO? And not just like the SEO, like what is it actually, what does it mean? And what were your day-to-day responsibilities in that role?
Yeah, so it's basically, it's called, SEO stands for search engine optimization, and it's basically making sure that for a lot of the newspapers, their online platforms, I mean, we were writing 12, 13 stories each a day.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you're writing the same stories that all the other newspapers are writing.
Absolutely.
So it's a case of making sure that your story is the one that when you Google search for the topic that you're searching for, your story is the one that's going to be at the top. And it's all about making sure that you've got the keywords that everybody's searching for and understanding what words people are searching for. And it's sometimes not the words you're expecting about the story. So even if you've written a story about a footballer, then you need to make sure that their nickname or something like that is in the title, because that's going to get them, because more people will search the nickname than they will search like the full name. It's always good fun, because there's still kind of stories out there, some of the most random stories that you'd write, especially like during the Six Nations and things. There is one that is, I think I wrote, that's literally what are the lyrics to The Flower of Scotland? And every time Scotland play anything, that story just pops up. And like friends,
testament to your skills.
Friends that still work at the Sun will message me going, "You're back at the top again." It just makes us kind of all laugh, because it's such a silly story, but it obviously works because people love to know what the lyrics are for The Flower of Scotland. So
love it. Where did you get those SEO skills from? What made you kind of the SEO editor? Because that's a huge role at the Sun.
Yeah, it's a lot of kind of learning. I did a few courses to kind of realise that was something that I kind of lacked in my skill ability. So went and did kind of a few online courses and things, and learned a lot from the guys at the Sun as well. It was not necessarily something I was completely confident in when I started. I kind of started as a bit of a freelance writer and moved into that SEO role when I realised I had a bit of a knack for it. But it comes with practice a lot of the time.
So moving on from that, I feel like we're doing a lot of moving on, but you have the most amount of experience ever. Like, it's just, I'm in awe of the things you've done. You then went freelance for about 3 years at the BBC. How was freelance life for you? Because for me, I'm currently freelance while I'm going into my 3rd year of uni. And there's obviously a lot of pros and cons to freelance life. How did you find it? Obviously, it wasn't that bad because you did it for 3 years.
Yeah, freelance is definitely not forever. And a lot of time, freelance is brilliant because it's the option that's out there to get you in the industry. At the time, I chose to go freelance purely because we wanted to move back to Manchester. We're from the north, and we'd been down in London for nearly 5 years at that point. So knew we wanted to kind of move back, and the opportunity came to come back to the BBC, so took it with both barrels and went for it.
How did you find living in London?
I loved it more than I expected. I was
Really?
very much like before I even contemplated moving down to London. I was very much like, no, I never want to live in London. Don't want to do that. Got offered a job and went, oh, okay, then why not? Let's go. And we loved it, and then came back, and 5 years was enough for us, definitely.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of like that hamster wheel where it kind of inspires everyone to keep going. Like, you're on the hamster wheel and you never get off, and everyone's just grinding and doing their thing. But then when I came back to Manchester, I moved to Manchester in September, it was kind of like a bit of a okay, this is a bit more calm and a bit chill. One of the questions I asked my other guests, which I wanted to get your opinion on since you've lived in both London and Manchester, do you think in this industry you do have to be in London for a little while at least, or work there to kind of make it or get better opportunities? Do you think it's necessary?
I think it's probably quite a natural thing. A lot of the companies are down in London, but now we're quite lucky in the fact that because of Media City, a lot of the companies are up here as well. And it probably will depend on what level or what sport or kind of whereabouts you want to go. I, like I say, loved being down there for the years I was down there. I never wanted to bring a family up, which was why we ended up moving back, because we wanted to bring up a family and have them up here close to our family. But I do think I've learnt an awful lot, probably a lot of independence as well by being in London, because we were just so far away from everybody else. It was myself and my husband, and we left everybody else up here. So
after that, you took quite a big leap, I imagine. You co-founded the Women's Football magazine. Had it been a goal of yours to launch your own publication for a while?
Yeah, it's always been, like, if you'd have asked me even back at uni, like, that was my ambition, was I always wanted, probably I'd have said back then my ambition was I wanted my own magazine, and I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you what it was, but I kind of naturally fell back into women's football. Like, I played very briefly as a child, but there wasn't really very many opportunities for me as a child, and kind of fell naturally back into it when I was at the Press Association, when they asked me to go and cover some England games, and then just fell in love with the sport, and completely fell back in love with the world, and it just felt like I'd found the place that I wanted to be and wanted to tell the stories. And then the actual kind of coming about of putting the magazine together came about over a dinner with some friends, where we were sat talking about things we wanted to do, and one of my friends who was the co-founder with me now, he's a web designer, and he was like, well, I could set all this up for you, we can do this and we'll do this. And by the time we'd got to the end of dinner, we'd come up with this business plan of what we were going to do and set it up the next day. So we cover everything from grassroots football all the way up to the international stage, which is the only magazine in the UK that covers all the different leagues and even the kind of grassroots stages that don't necessarily get the stories told that we need telling. So we have a monthly digital product, and then we've also got a quarterly print product, which we're very proud of, and it's brilliant. I just love doing it.
How many writers do you have working on it?
So we've currently got a team of 9.
Oh, amazing.
A team of 9 writers who cover all the different topics and are scattered up and down the country,
so
doing various
quite a
things.
big machine going on.
yeah, it's fantastic. It's just, I mean, we couldn't do what we do without the writers. They're a fantastic bunch.
I'm really curious. How do you actually go, because I know it was like a conversation at dinner, but how do you go from that conversation to like having the magazine in actuality? I feel like there's a lot of like in between stages for anyone who would want to launch their own magazine, because I feel like that's a pretty cool thing to do. Obviously you've got to register it as a business, like all of that kind of side of it. What are the practicalities of having it and launching it?
I mean, we have made so many mistakes along the way. I'm sure if you ask any business owner out there, they'll tell you exactly the same thing, like things that we were just doing that we didn't even know we were doing wrong. But a lot of it was we kind of just, to start with, just used the skill set we had. So I think the first issue we used like an online magazine kind of company, and put this put something together just to see put feelers out and see if anyone would be interested in it. Put it out on the website, said that the first issue was free, and all you had to do was kind of sign up your email address so we could see if there was an interest out there. And to be fair, that first issue we had was absolutely fantastic because it was just before the FA Cup final. And so we managed to get access to both Man City and Birmingham.
That's amazing.
So with some of the interviews we got in that first issue just really helped kind of catapult like us, and people could read all this content for free, which was greatly helpful to kind of get our name out there for the first time.
Yeah, I guess that's like brilliant timing as well. Was that intentional?
Yes, yeah, it was perfectly timed, to be honest. That conversation originally came about because I'd had an email saying, "Oh, do you want to come to Manchester City next week to do some content?" And at the time I was like, well, I'm not going to say no. I've got nothing to do it for, but I'm not going to say no. And that was kind of where we're like, well, let's make it something. Let's make there a reason to be there.
I thought it was pretty important while you were here to touch on the wider conversation of women in sport. Has there ever been a time in your career, because you've worked at a lot of different places and I guess each one is kind of different, where you've ever received hate on a piece you've done, or hate for being like a woman in sports journalism, or you've just kind of felt uncomfortable or not welcome in a particular environment?
Yeah, I don't think you could find a woman that works in sport that's not had silly messages off people, and some days they get to you, some days they don't. Thankfully, there are a lot fewer and far between than there used to be. I remember the really silly one that I wrote a story about Leeds, and it wasn't even... I can't remember writing anything even slightly controversial, but for some reason someone told me to jump off a bridge. And I remember reading it thinking, I don't know what I wrote to get that, but thankfully on the day I was just like, oh, well, fine, and kind of brushed it aside. It's awful to say it's something that kind of comes with the job, and you shouldn't ever want to have that opinion. But at the same time, for people who want to come into the industry, I don't want anyone to come into the industry and think that it might not be something. Because unfortunately the harsh reality is at some point you'll probably get something said to you that's unfair and untrue. Sometimes I think it might just be the world that we live in, and it doesn't matter kind of what industry you're in. Now people seem to think that hiding behind a computer means they can have an opinion that they wouldn't say to your face.
Have you ever experienced it in real life in like a workplace environment?
In a workplace environment, not for a really long time. I remember one of the first jobs I had, I'd phoned a desk for something, and had got a really snarky comment about, well, what are you doing on the sports desk? But thankfully that's very few and far between, and 9 times out of 10 people will take you that if you're there then you deserve to be there.
As they should.
Yeah, usually you can show pretty quickly that you know what you're talking about.
I don't know if this is too broad a question, but obviously you work with female footballers pretty much every day, I would assume. In your opinion, what kind of stereotypes and barriers do we need to break down in order for the women's game to flourish?
Gosh, good question. I think we're at a really weird, kind of exciting crossroads with women's football at the moment. So it's a very unique position that we'll never be in again, in that we have, at one end of the spectrum, we've got the experienced older players who started playing football because they loved the game, have 9 times out of 10 had part-time jobs for most of their careers, and if they're in the WSL now, have become professional at the end of their career, versus the younger players now who are coming through academies, because we now have academies in place, and going straight from the academies into getting pro contracts. And those two different sets of players are two very different sets of players as well. And I think for the next 10 years we've probably got this kind of move that's going to go away as the older players retire, and we will become a completely professional sport from the beginning. And I think with that is going to become a challenge in itself, of the fact that we've got these stereotypes at the moment where you'll look at footballers and think, and you'll be able to look at them and think, well, they're a doctor, they're a nurse, they're police officers or office workers or lawyers, and we won't get that. We actually need to sit there and look at them and go, they are footballers, because for the first time that will be their full-time job. And I think it's exciting.
It is.
But this next kind of 10 years is going to be really, really different for the game.
Where do you see it in 10 years?
Hopefully massive.
I would hope so as well. I feel like I could speak for a lot of women and say that when I was in school, it was kind of boys play football, girls play netball, and there was never a crossover at all. So I've been brought up in a family that's quite into football, but I never saw it as an avenue that I could go down. I've never even been interested in it. For that reason, it's never felt like a woman's space. For young girls growing up now, I really hope that in a few years it will just be completely normal. Like, that's what I would hope.
I hope so too, because, I mean, you say about netball, mine was hockey. And if you look back at the girls that I used to play hockey with, 9 out of 10 of us probably still play hockey. And I think if you can do that and get girls into football, it doesn't really matter for me, it doesn't matter what sport you can get girls into. But if you can get girls into sport at a young age, especially team sports, that they will then kind of keep doing into their adult lives, that is just that bit of release and a bit of fun and a friendship, quite frankly. You don't have to go into it wanting it to be professional, but there is just nothing better than sport as a release from everyday life and everyday work. And if now we've got football as an option for that as well, then it's just adding to it.
Does the fact that you work in sports journalism and not just reporting as a whole, does that kind of bring an element of fun to your job?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great job. I love the fact that my job's never the same every day. There's always something different to do, or we're always planning the next kind of content. It'll always be something different. And we have really obviously we have serious sit down content, but then we've got some also hilarious ones where we're just having fun, and you can't ask for better when you can just do a mix of everything.
So your current position now is content manager at the Man United women's team, and you were the first hire they've made in terms of like creating and managing their content, which I think is like a really massive step for the women's game. What does that role involve, and how did you feel when you landed it?
Ecstatic. I think I was a bit in shock when I first kind of got that phone call. It was a long interview process, naturally, because like you say, it was the first position, so they wanted to get it right. And then when I actually found out I'd got the job, it was just amazing. So I cover anything internal media. So we do kind of like pre-match interviews with the manager and players. We create a programme for all the home games. We have content that goes in all the Manchester United magazines, and anything that goes on MUTV that we do with the women's team as well.
Amazing. So what do you do like day to day? So from like start to finish, what does a typical day in your life
There is not a typical day in my life. Definitely not. It's all very, very different. It all depends, to be honest, it depends where we are in the week, whether we've got a match day, whether we've got a home or away match changes things. But like if like we look at it, like 2 days before match day, then a typical day kind of starts with, we do Mark's press conference in the morning and his like kind of pre-match interview. And then we get some access to one of the players, where we'll sit and we'll work out some kind of tailored content. So we sit down with the players when they join to make sure we understand what type of content they do, unlike doing, because it's just so important. Like, some of the players love doing the fun content, some would prefer to do something more serious, and we just make sure that we can kind of tailor it to the right people. Rachel Williams is a prime example that she just loves doing anything fun. So, I mean, she's always a great laugh to have on whenever we get the opportunity.
So you must have had like a lot of pinch me moments in your career. I bet you've met some absolute superstars. Can you give us a few of those pinch me moments?
Yeah, there's definitely been a couple. For United, it was the FA Cup final win this year. That was definitely one of those moments. There was a few of us kind of stood just watching all the celebrations, just crying. Just because it felt such a momentous moment, and we'd put in, like, the team that had gone down to the FA Cup final that had come down with me, we'd just put so much work in, and to see all that work kind of from our side, even just from the media side, come through and us be able to get this just incredible content was just, yeah, it was. I'm still living on that now, and it was back in May. That was fantastic. And then for the magazine, it was when England won the Euros final, and we were just all sat in the stadium. Again, a lot of my pinch me moments involve me crying, so I cry when I'm happy.
They do.
I cry when I'm happy, so yeah, we covered the Euros, and it was the women's Euros here in England. We made the decision before the start of the tournament to do a special edition of the magazine, and had 300 copies printed off. We did 3 different front covers. So we had an England front cover, a Northern Ireland front cover, and then like a rest of Europe cover. And the Northern Ireland one sold out within about 2 days, and we had to do a second print run on it. And we'd spoken to UEFA, who were running the tournament, and said, we're selling these magazines, like, I know we're not an official sponsor, but is it okay if we turn up at matches and just try and sell some of our magazines? And thankfully they absolutely were for it, because they didn't see it as a rival product to what they were selling. They saw it as part of an opportunity to grow the women's game, which was what they were all about. And we just had the best couple of weeks. We had, like, some of the writers came out. My dad, who is also our business manager, came with me to some of the games, and was just stood outside stadiums selling the magazines. And then to get to the final and get to watch England win just was the cherry on top.
So I think I read that the aim of the magazine in the beginning was to help inspire the next generation. What's the kind of reception you've had from it? Have you had kind of messages being like, I've read this and it's completely changed what I want to do?
I think what's so brilliant about it is I love finding out kind of the demographic of the magazine. We have everyone from parents who have bought it for their kids who are footballers, who want to read and want to learn more, to one of my favourite customers, and you probably shouldn't say you've got a favourite customer, but one of my favourite customers is an 88-year-old granddad whose granddaughter plays football, and he started buying it for himself because he wanted to learn more about her life and what she was doing, and he didn't have any clue about kind of the world of women's football, and he still buys it now, and it's 4 years on.
I love that so much.
Yeah,
that would
so
absolutely be my dad.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Like, the demographic of the mag just kind of does work for everybody, which is brilliant.
How many kind of stories do you have per magazine?
So we try and cover in every magazine all the different kind of leagues, and then it'll depend the length of interviews that we have, but it's 40 pages each kind of month, and then the same with the digital issue, with the print issue as well.
Going back to your role at Man United, I'm sure you spend a lot of time with your phone, because it's literally your entire job pretty much. How at the end of the day do you manage to kind of switch off from it? Because I would imagine that's quite difficult.
If I ever figure it out, I'll let you know. I have not figured that out yet. I am getting better at it. I'm definitely getting better at trying to go, I need to take some time, turn it off. Funnily enough, one of my friends has just introduced me to an app that you can block your social media for certain hours of the day, and it's the best money I spent, because now I just block my social media, so I'm like, I actually have to put my phone down because I can't do anything on it.
That's amazing.
Which is really good.
That is really good.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about your future in the industry, because obviously you've got this huge wealth of experience. In kind of 5 to 10 years' time, where do you see yourself?
Oh, good question. Growing at Manchester United, hopefully.
So you want to stay there?
Yeah, I do. It's a fantastic club to work for, and just we can see how far the women's team's come in 6 years. I can only kind of hope that we keep growing and keep building the team that we've got together, and keep just kind of going upwards. That's all we can hope for.
Would you say there's a lot of opportunities for women at Man United coming into media and football? Yeah,
definitely. We've got our team, the media team as a whole. We've got a mixture of anybody and everybody in that team, because it's about experience and about passion, to be honest, more than anything. If you're passionate about what you do, then that's what matters the most.
What would your advice be to a woman who's in university, really would like to go into the women's football journalism kind of field, but feels like they might not belong there, or there might not be enough opportunities for them? What would your advice be to kind of get to where you've got to at your level?
Reach out to as many companies as you can, even if it's just get voluntary roles. Voluntary roles can be so important, because you get so much experience, and you might even get a chance to go to games, and we've taken a lot of volunteers at the magazine, purely because we can get people into having experience and having these opportunities that they might not necessarily get whilst at university. I look back on my time at uni now and look at the work experience options that I had, and they got me to the career that I have now.
And they're pretty much non-existent now,
Yeah.
aren't they, really?
Yeah, so you've got to keep trying and just reach out to, even if you reach out to 10 companies, one will come back and say, yes, I've got something for you, or have you tried such and such person. The great thing about everybody that works in women's football are really, really open. So even if they can't help you, they'll probably at least be able to give you some advice.
Helen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you as a guest on Media and Me. Thank you so much for having this chat. I've learnt a lot, and I really know that a lot of people watching this will have too. Where can people go if they want to follow your journey and obviously find the magazine?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to follow me, I mean, my social media is very boring, but if you want to follow me, I'm just down as Helen Rowe-Willcocks on all my social medias. And the magazine is the Women's Football Magazine, and you can find us on our website or on social media as well.
Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode, and I will see you in the next one.